My husband and I barely spoke for 3 months after he retired. We lived in the same house, shared meals, watched TV together, but we'd stopped actually communicating about anything that mattered. This story illustrates one of 5 retirement-destroying habits I'll share with you today. The fix took 10 minutes a day and transformed our relationship. I'll explain why this became habit number 3 later, but first you need to understand how these patterns develop. Today, I'm breaking down 5 habits that quietly wreck retirement dreams and the practical micro-challenges you can start this week to fix them. Each habit builds on the others, creating either a downward spiral or an upward one. Has retirement or a major life change ever made you and your partner stop talking? Comment yes or no below. The first habit catches people off guard because it seems harmless, even liberating at first. Most people think retirement means freedom, but research shows losing work structure often changes routines and social activity, and studies find mixed effects on mental health. Some people improve, others struggle, so structure matters. The problem isn't what you'd expect. It's not money or health or boredom. It's something occupational therapy and retirement studies call a key challenge. Roles, habits, and routines give days shape, and losing them creates what researchers describe as time without texture. When your alarm stops going off and meetings disappear from your calendar, something strange happens to your brain. Without external rhythms marking your days, time loses its anchor points. Monday feels like Thursday. Morning blends into afternoon. Your brain, which spent decades organizing experiences around work schedules, suddenly has nothing to structure memories around. Days slip by without leaving traces. Some studies find increased depressive symptoms for some retirees, while other, higher-quality longitudinal studies show reduced risk of depression. Effects depend on context, socioeconomic status, and whether retirement was voluntary. The brain literally starts processing time differently when it lacks regular patterns. Instead of discrete, memorable days, you get stretches of unmarked time that feel like they never happened. You wake up wondering where the week went because, neurologically speaking, it didn't register as distinct experiences. Take Jim and Susan, both teachers who retired the same year. They'd planned to travel and spend quality time together. Instead, they found themselves sitting in the same chairs every morning, reading separate newspapers, with nothing new to discuss. Without individual routines creating fresh experiences, they had nothing interesting to share with each other. They became polite strangers in their own home. Here's what researchers discovered. Higher-income retirees instinctively create structure through planned activities, club memberships, and scheduled commitments. They replace work rhythms with self-designed rhythms. Lower-income retirees often drift into what experts call structured emptiness, the same empty activities filling the same empty hours every day. The physical effects compound quickly. Retirement is associated with mixed changes in physical activity. Some increase leisure exercise in higher socioeconomic groups, while others show decreases or more sedentary behavior in lower socioeconomic groups. Losing the incidental physical demands of work makes planned strength and balance activities more important. When days have no shape, bodies follow suit. Without reasons to get dressed, go places, or meet deadlines, physical decline accelerates. But here's the surprising part. Your brain can rebuild its time-processing pathways with remarkable speed. Neuroscientists studying retired adults found that consistent morning routines create new neural patterns within weeks. The brain starts forming memories again. Days become distinct. Time regains meaning. The solution is simpler than you'd imagine. A 30-minute morning ritual rebuilds your brain's relationship with time. Walk for 15 minutes, not for exercise, but for mental reset. Spend 10 minutes writing 3 sentences about yesterday or plans for today. Use the final 5 minutes to identify one meaningful task for the day, something that moves you toward a goal or connects you with another person. This isn't about productivity or self-improvement. It's about giving your brain the structure it needs to form memories and mark time. Within 2 weeks, people report feeling like their days matter again. Weeks stop disappearing. Time becomes an ally instead of something that just happens to you. But creating structure only solves half the problem. What fills those structured hours matters just as much, and that's where the second habit becomes dangerous. Several studies show TV and sedentary leisure often increase for retirees, especially in lower SES groups. That pattern is linked with worse adjustment in some samples. The damage isn't from screens themselves. It's from what passive consumption does to your brain's reward system. Passive consumption offers short hits of novelty and low effort, which makes active pursuits feel harder. Over months, this creates a behavioral feedback loop that rewires your thinking for inactivity. Your mental patterns literally reshape themselves to crave easier and easier forms of stimulation. Complex activities that once brought joy start feeling too difficult. Your brain begins preferring the path of least resistance. The research reveals a stark class divide in retirement screen habits. Wealthy retirees typically increase time spent on active hobbies like gardening, woodworking, or learning instruments. Working-class retirees more often slide into what researchers call digital sedation. They replace the mental engagement of work with passive entertainment, creating a dangerous cycle where the brain gradually loses its capacity for sustained attention and complex thinking. The comfort trap works like this. Streaming services and social platforms provide just enough novelty to keep you watching, but never enough challenge to build new neural connections. Your brain starts interpreting this as productive activity because it feels mildly stimulating. Meanwhile, activities that actually strengthen cognitive function begin feeling overwhelming. Reading a book seems too demanding. Learning a skill feels impossible. The bar for mental effort keeps dropping. Consider this composite example from my practice. Linda managed a team of 20 people at 58, solved complex problems daily, and thrived on intellectual challenge. Within 6 months of retirement, she was binge-watching true crime documentaries for 6 hours straight. Her adult children watched her vocabulary shrink, her curiosity disappear, and her personality flatten. She went from someone who asked probing questions to someone who only discussed television plots. Reviews find that increases in passive leisure correlate with poorer psychological adjustment, while active leisure correlates with better life satisfaction. The physical cascade makes everything worse. Excessive screen time disrupts sleep quality by suppressing melatonin production. Poor sleep triggers inflammatory responses throughout the body. Higher inflammation reduces motivation for physical activity and complex mental tasks. This creates a downward spiral where passive consumption becomes the only activity that feels manageable, while everything else requires energy you no longer have. Here's what research suggests about reversing this pattern. Micro-engagements can rebuild damaged thinking patterns surprisingly quickly. Just 20 minutes of skill-building activity creates enough new mental connections to counteract hours of passive consumption. The brain's neuroplasticity means it can relearn complex thinking patterns at any age, but only if you give it the right stimulation. Try a simple heuristic I recommend. For every hour of passive screen time, follow with roughly 20 minutes of active, skill-building, or social activity. It's a small counterbalance that many retirees find shifts momentum back toward engagement. Read a chapter, call a friend, practice a musical instrument, write in a journal. These micro-engagements rebuild your brain's capacity for sustained attention and complex thought. Tonight, swap the first 20 minutes of TV for a 20-minute reading or hobby sprint, and notice how you feel. This active mindset becomes crucial when retirement forces couples into constant proximity without the communication skills to handle it. Remember those 3 months when my husband and I barely spoke? Here's how it started. When he retired, we went from spending 8 hours apart each day to 24 hours together. Suddenly, we had no separate experiences to share, no individual challenges to discuss, no distinct identities beyond being two people in the same house. Every small communication gap that work schedules had masked became magnified under constant proximity. The psychological shift happens gradually, then all at once. For decades, your work identity gave you something unique to bring home. You were the problem solver, the team leader, the expert in your field. Your partner had their own professional persona. Now you're both just retirees, sharing the same routines, seeing the same walls, with nothing new to report at dinner. The retirement literature documents this pattern clearly. Losing work roles removes natural conversation starters and can reduce meaningful exchanges between partners. Studies show many couples report growing apart during retirement, becoming strangers, losing connection. They describe feeling lonely while sitting next to each other every evening. The surprising part? Most don't cite major conflicts or infidelity. They simply drift apart as retirement removes the separate experiences that once fueled their conversations. The expectation trap catches most couples off guard. You assume spending more time together will automatically bring you closer. You imagine long conversations, shared projects, renewed intimacy. Instead, without intentional effort, you actually share less meaningful conversation. Work provided natural conversation starters. Without that external content, many couples default to logistics. Who's picking up groceries? What time is the dentist appointment? When are the grandkids visiting? The pattern becomes insidious. You stop discussing feelings because nothing dramatic is happening. You avoid conversations about changing roles because they seem too complicated. Who handles what around the house now? How do you split time between individual interests and couple activities? These unaddressed questions create small resentments that compound daily. For us, it started with breakfast. We'd sit across from each other, both scrolling phones, occasionally commenting on news headlines. Then we'd spend the day in separate rooms, coming together for meals where we'd discuss the weather or television shows. Small irritations grew enormous in the silence. The way he cleared his throat, how I organized the dishwasher. We were living parallel lives under the same roof. The devastation surprised me. We weren't fighting. We weren't cruel to each other. We were just disappearing from each other's emotional lives, becoming polite roommates who happened to share a bed. The solution, when we finally found it, felt almost embarrassingly simple compared to how lost we'd become. Studies and occupational practice point to staying in the habit of emotional exchange and shared planning as protective for couples. The 10-minute nightly check-in changed everything for us. Each evening, we share one highlight from the day, one challenge or low point, and make one small request for the week ahead. No problem-solving during check-ins, just listening. Weekly, we spend 30 minutes discussing practical plans. Try tonight's 10-minute check-in. No problem-solving, just listening. And note one thing that feels different. This emotional foundation supports everything else, including maintaining the physical capacity that keeps you independent and engaged with each other. Age-related muscle and balance decline accelerates in later decades, and retirement removes incidental physical demands. Reviews show leisure time physical activity can increase for some groups, but overall functional strength and balance are critical to independence. Most people don't notice until they can't get out of a chair without using their hands. By then, simple movements have become challenging because the decline happens so gradually that you adapt without realizing how much strength you've lost. Retirement removes the incidental strength building that work provided. Carrying boxes, climbing stairs to meetings, lifting equipment, walking between buildings. These activities kept muscles engaged without conscious effort. Many retirees replace this with walking and light cardio, believing these activities maintain overall fitness. Walking benefits your heart and mood, but it doesn't challenge your muscles enough to prevent loss. Cardio alone won't keep you strong enough to lift groceries or rise from low seats. Between the 60s and 70s, many people see faster declines in strength and balance, making this decade important for building functional reserves that will carry you through your 70s and 80s with independence intact. Miss building these reserves, and simple tasks become challenges that require assistance. The cascade effect devastates quality of life. Weak legs increase fall risk. falls create injuries, and, more importantly, fear of movement. Fear leads to less activity, which accelerates muscle loss further. This downward spiral pushes people toward assisted living not because of illness, but because they lack the physical capacity for independent daily life. Consider Marie, an active 62-year-old who walked 4 miles daily and felt proud of her fitness routine. 2 years later, she couldn't lift her 18-month-old grandchild. Her cardiovascular system stayed strong, but her functional strength disappeared because walking never challenged her leg muscles enough to maintain lifting capacity. She could walk for miles but struggled to carry laundry baskets upstairs. Research reveals why functional movement exercises outperform gym machines for maintaining independence. Compound exercises like squats and hinges engage multiple muscle groups simultaneously, mimicking real-world movements. When you practice getting up from chairs, you're training the exact motion you need dozens of times daily. Isolated machine exercises might strengthen individual muscles, but fail to coordinate the complex movement patterns required for daily activities. Reviews show that while leisure time activity may increase in some, strength and balance training are the specific kinds of work that preserve independence. Just 15 minutes, 3 times weekly, provides enough stimulus to maintain and even build functional strength. This isn't about becoming a bodybuilder or spending hours in gyms. It's about preserving the physical capacity that keeps you independent. A simple self-check used by clinicians works as both assessment and training tool, rising from a chair without using your hands or arms for assistance. Practice this movement regularly, and you're simultaneously testing and training the exact strength pattern you need most. Your routine needs 4 components: squats for leg strength, hinge movements for back and hip power, balance drills for stability, and mobility stretches for joint health. Do 15 minutes of this routine today and record whether you can rise from a chair without your hands. Use that as your baseline. Physical strength creates the foundation for everything else, but having the capacity for activity means nothing without the motivation to use it. That motivation comes from having a sense of purpose, and here's where many retirees discover their biggest blind spot. The evidence on life satisfaction after retirement is mixed. Some people report higher life satisfaction, others lower. And a key predictor is whether retirees engage in meaningful activities and role replacements. You can have millions in the bank and still wake up feeling worthless. The problem isn't your portfolio balance, it's the complete absence of purpose that follows when your professional identity disappears overnight. Society obsesses over retirement savings calculations, while completely ignoring the psychological infrastructure needed for fulfillment. Financial advisors show charts about compound interest and withdrawal rates. Nobody teaches you how to rebuild meaning when your job title vanishes. We prepare extensively for having enough money to stop working, but never consider what we'll do with ourselves once we actually stop. Even wealthy retirees experience crushing depression and anxiety when their sense of usefulness evaporates. Human brains evolved to seek contribution and growth. Without meaningful challenges, your mental health deteriorates regardless of your bank account. The brain doesn't distinguish between poverty and purposelessness when it comes to triggering distress signals. The identity crisis hits hardest for people who derive significant self-worth from their careers. One day, you're director of marketing, making decisions that affect hundreds of people. The next day, you're just another retiree with no clear role or value to offer society. Your business card becomes meaningless. Your expertise sits unused. You go from being someone important to being someone invisible. Robert exemplifies this pattern perfectly. He sold his consulting firm for $8 million and felt completely prepared for retirement. Within 6 months, he was spending entire days watching financial news channels, not because he needed to manage money, but because he craved the illusion of professional engagement. He felt worthless until he started teaching business skills to young entrepreneurs for free. Suddenly, his decades of experience had value again. He wasn't just consuming time, he was contributing something meaningful. Occupational therapy research and retirement studies find that engagement in meaningful activities like volunteering, teaching, and part-time work predicts higher life satisfaction. Your brain lights up differently when you apply hard-earned expertise to help others solve problems. This isn't about staying busy with random activities. It's about channeling your accumulated knowledge toward meaningful contribution. The initial step needs to be smaller than you think. You don't need to launch a nonprofit or commit to major volunteer roles. Start with one small project that uses skills you already possess. Research shows that leisure exploration and role replacement preserve identity and improve adjustment during retirement transitions. The framework is simple. Identify one skill from your career that could benefit others, then find the smallest possible way to share it. Teach a class at the community center. Mentor someone starting in your former field. Create something valuable that uses your expertise. Tonight, list one professional skill you enjoy using and one low-effort way to share it next month. A 30-minute talk, one mentoring call, a short class. Reclaiming usefulness is psychological and social as much as financial. When you reconnect with your ability to contribute, something shifts. You remember who you are beyond your bank account. But purpose alone isn't enough when these patterns start connecting in ways that either build you up or tear you down. These 5 habits tend to interlock and, without intentional change, can push retirements toward lower well-being. No schedule leads to passive consumption. Screen addiction weakens communication skills. Relationship problems create stress that undermines physical health. Physical decline reduces energy for purposeful activities. However, small, consistent changes produce meaningful improvements over time. Pick one micro-challenge this week: the 30-minute morning ritual, 2-for-1 screen rule, 10-minute nightly check-ins, 15 minutes of strength work, or one small way to share your skills. Which micro-challenge will you try? Comment below. Small, consistent actions compound into major life changes over months and years. Retirement can become the most purposeful, connected, and physically capable decades of your life when approached intentionally. I've been there. Start with one small change and see what happens. If this helped, hit subscribe. I post practical steps like these every week. Want to follow up on rebuilding purpose? Comment "purpose" and I'll make it next. Quit these 5 habits now and you'll get your time, health, and joy back, piece by piece. Start with one tiny step today. See you next time.